Inspired Talks of Swami Vivekananda, Pranam Mantra. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Sure Sachit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Netapaharine. We have been discussing what Swamiji talked on the 10th July 1895. And Swamiji was mostly talking about the Vedas and what the purpose of the Vedas are, how they are important, and how Acharya Shankar has interpreted the Vedas. The topic continues. We had to stop midway because we need to go deeper into it. Now, there is no way of knowing what Swamiji had told in between because the notes were taken by someone who noted down things after the class, and depending on that lady's understanding, these notes were made. So naturally, we cannot fill up the gaps. Fortunately, there are no dot marks, but we can try to understand what Swamiji was trying to convey. In the process, the examples that we use, the explanations that we draw from, are from the present day world. Now, Swamiji is talking about Acharya Shankara's worldview, worldview based on the Vedas. Now, before we continue with this, let me tell something very interesting. There's a very beautiful writer, Nicholas Taleb, I think Nassim Nicholas Taleb. His famous book is Black Swan. That's his philosophy, Black Swan. And normally you see white swans, but once in a while you see black swan too. And what Taleb tries to convey to us is that the world is all about randomness. There's only randomness. There is no pattern in it. Even when you are trying to see pattern, suddenly you find that something unexpected happens. And he calls it black swan. So, and his another book is Fooled by Randomness. I've read only two of his books. And when I was reading these two books, that was many years ago, I was impressed by the sheer amount of information that he had. He used to be a voracious reader, born in Lebanon. I'm not sure where he stays now. It must be in America because these kind of books find publishers only in America. What had surprised me, say, about Taleb or that famous book Sapiens, and for that matter, any book, any famous book, particularly if it has even the slightest touch of philosophy, you find that essentially they are trying to convey their worldview to us. They looked at the world, they tried to understand the world, and the worldview that they formed, they tried to convey to us. What I found very interesting in Taleb's book was that he himself tries to he tries to draw patterns and goes on condemning patterns, because when he says that it's all about black swan, you are talking about the probability of some improbability. That's very interesting. So this world is run by two kinds of people, thinkers and doers. Doers are the active ones, thinkers are the lazy ones. By lazy ones, I mean they keep quiet, they think. And they give us a worldview. So when Shakespeare is describing Romeo and Juliet, we may think that he's being objective, but he's not being objective. He's offering his worldview to us. or maybe Macbeth. That's why you will see that some authors are a bit pessimistic, some are more optimistic, because that's how they look at the world. Now, when you try to classify the kinds of worldviews, you come across mostly three. Those who look at the world entirely from the materialistic viewpoint. Most of us belong to this category. If you look back and see the teachings that our parents gave us, it was just to take us along in this world so that we could find some foothold or some toehold in this world, so that we could earn some money, we could have some comfortable life, we could get some amount of respect with the help of which we could have a smooth life. It's a different matter that in spite of all the teachings, even if you apply all those teachings, neither you get respect, nor you get security, nor you get wealth. See, the best example is, if those of you who are genuinely interested in studying these things, just go to any library, take out the newspapers which are 30 years old, and just look at the trend. The business houses which were very famous, that you can make out from the advertisements, and political parties which were very famous, personalities which were very famous, and after 30 years, just see where they stand. You'll see that most of those famous brands, they've gone completely out of circulation. And what might have happened to all the employees that were there in that company? One can just think of. Why? Because actually there is no certainty in this world. We pick up certain skills and we hope that these skills will help us. For example, when we were growing up, it was essential that one learned typing. Typing was so important. When I joined the Ramakrishna mission, they expected that I would know typing. And suddenly the computers came, and the problem was what they would do with all these typewriters and the typists. I was at Narendrapur, and I was trying to persuade the head there to have computers in the central office. And he would go on telling me the same thing again and again. What would I do with all the typists that I have? But see, can you stop the coming of computers? No, you cannot. This is how life goes. So most people belong to this category. And then there are some who are thinkers, people who come up with certain worldviews and tell us that we need to look at the world this way, and that will give us more peace, more joy. If you try to go deeper, you will see that essentially there is no difference between the first category and the second category. People of first category have a limited understanding. People of the second category have slightly expanded understanding of the world. But essentially, they are not different. Had they been different, America would have never faced financial collapses. They have large maximum number of business schools, most famous business schools, etc. And see, even then they have their collapses, unexpected collapses, because the world does not run on the principles laid down by so-called thinkers, nor does our life run. Then we have the spiritual persons. Now, when you look at these spiritual persons, you find that the followers of Jesus and the followers of Prophet Muhammad and the followers of Shankaracharya and followers of Ramanuja, they are constantly at odds with each other. There also it's worldview only. How Acharya Shankara looked at the world. That means the experience that he gathered. He did certain sadhana. He had his spiritual practices and he had certain realization, because Every one of us has some realization. How we look at ourselves, how we look at the world, that is our realization. In one of the earlier talks, we had a basic discussion on Brahma Sutra, where Acharya Shankara mentions that the idea of you and the idea of I, me and the world, it is there with everyone. And the idea of self is there with everyone. So the basic understanding of the world and the basic understanding of me is with everyone. It's not only understanding, it's realization, you are convinced. However, there is a difference between these spiritual persons and a common man. A common man's understanding keeps on evolving as his mind evolves. As far as spiritual persons are concerned, they have seen the truth, so they don't evolve. They have seen the complete picture. Okay, fine, if they have seen the complete picture, then who is right? Is Prophet Muhammad more right than, say, Acharya Shankara? Who is correct? Or forget, don't go to other religions, stay confined to our own. Who is more correct, Acharya Shankara or Madhvacharya? See, it is not even a question of being correct or being not correct. Now, this is the most important thing that I would like to discuss. Hold on to what appeals to your mind. That is the only taste of truth. Does that life appeal you? Does Shankar appeal you? Do you find the life, the work, the achievement, and everything about, say, Ramanuja fascinating? Go follow him. Problem is that when it comes to following spiritual practices, we go strictly by what our family has been practicing. Best example is Bihar. I've lived in Bihar for a very long time. I know. Bihar, the land that gave Mahavir Jain and Gautam Buddha and Guru Govind Singh and greats like Mandan Mishra, Aryabhatta. Its entire religion is now confined to Chhat Puja, which is not even a puja, it's a vrata. Because see, that's their worldview. It's not about condemning anybody or saying or belittling somebody. It's just a statement of fact. It appeals their mind. Chhat. Chhat is about performing vrata, performing certain practices by housewives or mothers for the welfare of their kids. And there it ends. It has no mantras. It has no rituals. It has no priest. How can it be a puja? Because in India, if there is a puja, if it's a worship, it has to be a yajna. And if it is a yajna, there has to be mantra, Vedic mantra. Anyway, that's a different issue. The important thing is that we just go on practicing what our family has been practicing or what our peer group has been doing, my friends have been doing. We don't apply our own mind, our own rationality, our reasoning power when it comes to religion. However, if you really want to be enlightened in life, if you want spiritual achievement in life, you need to look at these personalities and see who appeals you the best. Just look. Does Sri Ramakrishna appeal you? Does Shankar appeal you? Does Swami Vivekananda appeal? Is there any appeal in your mind for him? Go ahead. And then, of course, you need to see what exactly appeals to you. Swami Vivekananda did lots of things. Like when we were young, we were fascinated by Swami Vivekananda. You felt that there was some kind of power, supreme power, superpower emanating from his personality. But at my age, that does not really count. At my age, you want to enter within you, you want to go deeper, deeper within. Then all those things, sisters and brothers of America, and all those powers and glamours associated with those words and acts, they do not appeal you very much. When it comes to philosophy of religion, same thing, same rule applies. How do you want to look at the world? Do you want to feel that oneness, ultimate oneness? Or do you want to feel that God is separate and I am separate? But more than that, which personality makes the greatest impact on you? And somebody once asked me about Ramanujan and all. I said, I had very cursory reading of him. I am not interested. For me, Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, and Shankaracharya, they are more than enough. One life is much more than enough. He may be more correct. It's not meant for me. So whatever we are discussing is entirely from that standpoint. Acharya Shankara applied reason. He presented his arguments based entirely on reason. Of course, the basis was the Vedas. It may make an appeal, it may not. What Acharya Shankara was trying to say was that reasoning is important. Experiences are important. However, those reasonings and the realizations that you have, they must conform to some kind of continuity. So, when I began with Nicholas Taleb, he's talking about black swan, sudden movement of something in this world. For example, India was thinking of economic growth of this percent, that percent. Suddenly here we have this corona, and the whole thing has gone topsy-turvy. So you really cannot go on predicting things. That means continuity in life is so difficult. This does not happen in spiritual realization. You cannot say that suddenly there will be an upstart and everything will go in a different direction. Or it does not happen. We Hindus, we don't accept it that way. We say that there must be continuity. The Vedas, which are the record of the great sages of the past, they must contain some statement. If such statements are there, then there is some kind of continuity. Otherwise, how would I know that what you are saying is not the product of your mind? If it is the product of your mind, you are just like one of these thinkers. You are like maybe Schopenhauer, and you are like Kant, and you are like Hegel or something like Taleb. Why should I be following you? If I have to dedicate my life, if I have to fashion my life on some words, I need to have a sage as an ideal, not a thinker. We Indians, we don't attach much value to thinkers. We want to mold ourselves in the format given by the sages, not by the thinkers. Now, when you go through the Vedas, you find that mostly they are about prayers and they are about rituals, they are about sacrifices. So it comes to our mind, and we Hindus, we are extremely ritualistic by nature. Extremely ritualistic. Now, if we are so ritualistic, and if the Vedas are talking about yajnas and all. So naturally, that becomes the only way. Acharya Shankara breaks free from there, and he lays a lot of stress on the Upanishads. Here, Swamiji will be talking from the Mundak Upanishad. Now, these Upanishads, those of you who had even the slightest brush with these Upanishads, you'll find in our playlist on this channel, Ishopanishad and Kathopanishad in English. You can listen to those talks. And if we have time, if we ever get time, we'll try to cover more Upanishads. These masters, these spiritual masters, when they have seen the reality, they do not go dancing in the street the way Archimedes did, Eureka, Eureka. They try to find ways that people can understand what is being the truth, because everybody cannot take that truth. There will be people who love rituals, and there are people who love to recite. For example, I myself, just to mean, in my young age, I loved the recital of Gita and Durga Saptashati Chandi and all. Now, I'm not much into it. But then, there are many monks, very elderly monks here, who do it every day. And they'll feel suffocated if they don't do it. Then there are people who want to mold their life entirely on the righteousness, what is correct and what's not correct. So the ultimate truth about God, where you say that I want God and God alone, this is the realization mode. So you have ritual mode, you have recital mode, and you have righteousness mode, and you have realization mode, the 4 R's. These are the 4 R's of religion. Religion has 4 R's. Realization mode is not for everyone. But simply because I am not capable of it, should we lower the ideal? No, we should not. Hindu religion is meant for everybody. Hindu religion gives space to everyone and every kind of worship. You can go on worshipping trees and stones. You can go on worshipping idols and vigrahas. You can go on worshipping personal God, and you can also try to be one with the supreme reality, which is Brahman. It's not one single quote which must fit everybody. No, Hindus are not like that. What Acharya Shankara did was, he said, there's place for everybody. But that does not mean that the highest truth should be compromised. Highest truth had been compromised before him. The other philosophical systems of the Hindus had made the compromise. Acharya Shankara came, and he was not the first. He was not the first Vedantin. There were Vedantins before him, like his own guru, Govindapad and Gaudapad, and the line went up to Vyas and maybe earlier. Like Sri Krishna himself was a Vedantin. He used the parameters of his time and showed how Vedanta is the way. How Vedanta is what the Vedas are trying to teach. Some of you might find these talks a bit technical, a bit boring, but then one has to know. Everything need not be practiced. When you feel that knowledge is the way and knowledge is the goal, you should know that you have really arrived. Knowledge is the end of knowledge. When you reach that state, you know that you have really arrived. Shankara further affirms that obedience to ceremonial is not knowledge. That is what we mentioned when you look at the Vedas. In Rig Veda, first mantra begins with Agni Mide Purohitam. We offer our oblations to Agni. And the whole of Rig Veda continues with that. Whole of Yajur Veda is about performing yajnas. Same with Samved. In other Ved, you find some mantras which are dedicated purely to Atman. However, Vedas have four sections. The last of them are the Upanishads, which discuss self knowledge exclusively. When these communist historians came, actually, for a very long time, even before independence, historians in India meant communist historians. And the moment communists enter, for them, everything is class struggle. Everything is class struggle. Now, there are the Vedas with Yagyas, and here we have Upanishads, which talk about self knowledge, which condemn sacrifices. Naturally, now you find clash. There's that struggle. And communist ideology is based on Hegel, philosophy of Hegel. A philosophy of Hegel talks about thesis and antithesis and synthesis. The fundamental problem with Hegel, and that is why Schopenhauer called him monument of German stupidity. And communism based on his philosophy. The problem with thesis, antithesis, and synthesis is that you are judging things in retrospect. Now, when you judge things in retrospect, it becomes a very dangerous thing. That is not at all a way to know things. When you are looking at something which has already happened, and then you said that this one is thesis and this one is antithesis, it's extremely wrong. This is not the way. Now, what happens when you find absolutely innocent things happening, and there also you try to apply thesis and antithesis? It's strange. So they said that Upanishads are the revolt of the Kshatriya class against the Brahmins. Probably no one had told these communist historians that every Upanishad was written down, realized, written down, orally transmitted, and maintained by the Brahmins. And then they said the Puranas. This was the revolt of the lower caste against the Brahmins. I wonder where they get these ideas. When I had first read these things, I was so impressed because I had not read the original. I was so fascinated by their ideas. It took me time to realize that what garbage they have been serving. Acharya Shankar himself says he was a Brahmin. As ceremonials, that's not knowledge. Knowledge of God is independent of moral duties or sacrifice or ceremonial or what we think or do not think. How do you think what you do not think of God? How does it matter? Just as the stump is not affected when one man takes it for a ghost and another sees it as it is. Knowledge is knowledge. Now, this is a very important and in one way, a very simple thing, in another way, a very deep thing. See, knowledge of God, there is knowledge. Knowledge will remain absolutely unaffected by how you look at it. Swamiji uses the example of a stump in darkness. Someone may think that it's a thief, someone may think it's a ghost, and some other may think that no, it's a stump because he has known it. That does not alter the true nature of the stump. Same with God. You can think of God as yagya. Actually, if you look at our old scriptures, there they say that sacrifice is everything, yagya is everything. And they have beautiful arguments for that, and they quote from the Vedas. Similarly, we focus our energies on ceremonials, on our good conduct. See, India is still struggling with whether or not one should eat meat. How is meat eating related to realization? You can't make them understand. You can't simply make them understand. These things belong to personal taste. These things belong to the realm of mind. These things have nothing to do with realization. Knowledge of God remains absolutely beyond all this. How you are making the sacrifices, yajna, what kind of worship you are performing, whom you are worshipping, all these things do not alter the nature of God. Goal is knowledge has to be acquired as knowledge. Knowledge has to be seen as knowledge. Knowledge must not be seen through sacrifices, through rituals. Knowledge has to be seen through knowledge and as knowledge. Now, this is where we make mistake. For example, if there is a particular sect which sees God, his God, as the only God, and then prescribes certain rituals, you are trying to see God through those rituals. But God is not going to be affected by your rituals, nor he is going to be affected by your devotion, because God is knowledge. Knowledge has to be acquired as knowledge, and God knowledge has to be acquired only through knowledge. Now, this is a very simple argument, yet very profound argument, where most people flounder. We tend to slip. Knowledge is knowledge. If seen through the principles of yoga, this becomes very clear. Now, we have been conducting Raj Yoga classes. Those of you interested can watch the Raj Yoga classes. Raj Yoga very clearly says that there is active mind and there is the stilled mind. Stilled mind is when you get the knowledge of God. Active mind is when you gain the knowledge of the world. Whenever you are doing any sacrifice, any ritual, any yajna, you are taking the name of God, you are conscious of your meditation, whatever you might be doing, mind is active. Till mind is active, you are bound within the realm of the mind. And the realm of mind is world. So there is no way that you can have knowledge of God till you are doing anything. The only way is stilling the mind. You have to still the mind, not passivity minded. Because to still the mind, first, you need to be extremely active. Active, not aggressively, active, not selfishly, but where you are trying to focus your mind, you are trying to build your mental energies and try to rise up. So, Vedanta is necessary because neither reasoning nor books can show us God. No, reasoning cannot take you to God. Nowadays, because of social media, so many opinions keep coming in. Um, some of those opinions come to me also. And as one can see, a better mind will come up with better reasoning. So there is no way that you can reason. You can prove God through reason, or you can disprove God through reason. No, you cannot. Because even if you prove the existence of God today, or if you succeed in proving the non-existence of God tomorrow, a greater mind will come and disprove you. Finished. So you cannot. And books are mere words. And ultimately, books are also just like reasoning. So books cannot take you there. See, there are some religions, they talk about religion of the book. It started with the Judaism. And they don't realize that they are bound by words. How can God be bound by words? It's a simple argument. How can God be bound by words? I mean, these are very simple reasoning. Try telling people, they'll become mad at you. He is only to be realized by super conscious perception, and Vedanta teaches how to attain that. Now, that's something very interesting. When we say that, well, all religions are true and God is one, we forget that under no condition every religion is same, because every religion takes you towards personal God, not towards God who is impersonal. Other religions don't take you directly on the path of super consciousness. What other religions teach you is piety, serving others, and prayers. But no, path to God is through super consciousness. Super consciousness means stilling the mind. Your mind becomes completely stilled. This is something that no one teaches. But if you chance to read the biographies of Christian mystics, you will see that they did this kind of sadhana only. Although this never entered the psyche of the common masses. You must get beyond personal God and reach the absolute Brahman. This is where every other religion collapses. And this is where even our Ramanujan and Madhva collapse, because they explain Brahman in a different way. Absolute Brahman, later Swamiji will at one point say, either it is nihilism or it is absolutism. We will discuss, we will explain when we come to that sentence. It's very important. We have mind, we have powerful mind. If we try to reason out things, we shall see that if the mind is active, we will be seeing God through our mind. So naturally, God will be colored by our mind. It's a very simple argument. So naturally, the question comes, what happens if the mind is still? How can we know? This is where we talk about superconsciousness. Superconsciousness is the state where mind becomes silent completely, and yet it has perception, it has the power to perceive. Because that's when the absolute knowledge gets reflected. For example, think of a mirror. A mirror that's continuously moving. The image that you get is of movement, not of rest. If you can somehow stop the movement, then you will get the correct picture. A stopped mirror, as far as we understand mirror, the mirror has been moving. A mirror that has stopped moving is not really a mirror in that sense, as we have been discussing. But that is what gives us the correct picture, correct reflection. God is the perception of every being. He is all there is to be perceived. That which says I is Brahman, but although we day and night perceive him, we do not know that we are perceiving him. You see, this is very interesting. Swamiji is discussing this from Brahma Sutra again. Ultimately, it's the same Brahman. When I say that I am seeing this pen, I am looking at this pen, it's the same Brahman which is appearing to us as the world, as the same Brahman which is saying, I. I'll tell you. These things are beyond comprehension of a novice. A person who is listening to these things for the first time will not even be able to comprehend these things. You require some basic training. When we were discussing Brahma Sutra, you will find in one of those earlier talks, Acharya Shingras was very clearly. that how that pure knowledge, which we also call Brahman or Atman, appears as two, one as world and one as me. So the idea of I, which actually is Brahman, is always present there. And we are continuously seeing this that Brahman in the form of the universe. Only problem is what we consider as universe is actually Brahman. Now, this is not something theoretical. This is the reality. Why and how? As we mentioned, it's about worldview. If you like Shankaracharya, if you like Swami Vivekananda, if you are fascinated by those personalities and their work, you say that, okay, fine, I also want to be like him. And then you get deeper into it, and then you go deep and further deep into sadhana. And then finally you come up with these realizations. Acharya Shankar has just tried to present things as logically as possible. But as you know well, the Acharya Shankar's arguments were attacked by persons like Ramanuja and Madhvacharya. That's a different issue. We are not getting it. The thing is, even Acharya Shankara did not remain unchallenged. As soon as we become aware of this truth, all misery goes. So we must get knowledge of the truth. We are miserable because I have limited myself to this body. I have limited my love to one, two, three persons. We have limited ourselves. And because we have limited ourselves, that's why we are miserable. Others are getting it, I am not getting it. I have ill health, others do not have. I am sick, others are not. I am ignorant, others are not. Whenever I read a good book written by someone, I feel I wish I had talent to write like that. Now see, I do not become miserable. What I mean to say that sometimes you feel how I wish. It's not jealousy. It's not being miserable. It's just a statement of fact. You feel, I wish. However, when you are identified very deeply with your body and with the body of your beloved ones, then this problem comes. Misery goes only when you have known the truth. Even while you are listening to this talk, if you could just pause for a moment and try to look around you and just tell yourself, whatever you are looking at, everything that is in front of you is ultimately God appearing as this pen, as this microphone, as these walls. So frightening, so intriguing, and so fascinating. Reach unity, no more duality will come. But knowledge does not come by sacrifice, but by seeking, worshipping, knowing the Atman. If you keep on thinking that you are Atman, and by very definition, Atman means that you yourself have made this world. You are appearing as this world. You alone are the subject. You alone are the object. As I told you, it is fascinating and yet frightening. You seem to lose all your individuality. But remember that individuality lies in universality. We have discussed it earlier. Individuality lies in universality. Only when you become universal that you get your true individuality. So actually you do not lose your individuality, you gain your individuality. Now here Swamiji takes up Mundak Upanishad, where there's it begins with Dve Vidye Veditabhye. Some sages approached more learned sages and asked them, What is the way by which we can know everything? What is that knowledge, knowing which one can know everything? Kasminnu bhagavo vigyatum sarvamidam vigyatam bhavati iti. Which knowledge is there by knowing which one can know everything? And then the answer comes, there are two kinds of knowledge. One is known as paravidya, other is known as aparavidya. Higher and the lower, the great and the ordinary. And this ordinary, the lower, is about this world. And the Vedas, all the Vedas also are classified in the lower knowledge. Only Brahma Vidya, the knowledge that takes you towards God, towards Atman, is higher knowledge. Brahma Vidya is the highest knowledge, knowing the Brahman, and lower knowledge is science. All these sciences. So Yajna is also a science. Yajna is a science of sacrifice. This is the teaching of the Mundaka Upanishad or the Upanishad for the sannyasis. Well, Mundaka Upanishad. Mundak is it's explained as shaven head. So this is meant for sannyasis. It's difficult to say why, because Acharya Shankar also said it is meant for the sannyasis. There are two sorts of knowledge, principal and secondary. The words used in the Upanishads are para and apara. Para is higher. I'm saying the literal meaning, and apara is lower. Swamiji says primary, secondary. Oh, not primary, sorry, principal and secondary. The unessential is that part of the Vedas dealing with worship and ceremonials. Also, all secular knowledge, everything that we study, they belong to secondary. The principal knowledge is Brahma Vidya, by which you know Atman. Yat tat aksharam adhigamyate. The knowledge that takes you to Akshara, the knowledge that takes you to Atman, that is the principal knowledge. If the Absolute creates all form, all from its own nature, there is nothing to cause, nothing outside. Brahman alone exists, and it creates everything from within. So how can there be anything outside? Everything is in Atman. How can there be anything outside? See, it's a very simple argument. If God existed, simple, take up any religion. If God is the master, and creation is his will, not definitely nothing existed outside him. So whatever is there in creation is he himself. There cannot be anything outside him. Only Sankhya and Yoga, who talk about Purusha and Prakriti, who talk about two different realities, can talk like that. But other religions, for them, God alone has become everything. It's a very simple argument. He who makes all sacrifices to himself, the Atman, he alone knows Brahman. To know Brahman, you have to know that whatever you are doing, whatever sacrifices you are making it to Atman. Because there is nothing outside Atman. There is no God outside you. Fools think outside worship the highest. Fools think works can give us God. No. These are frightening statements. And to think that Swamiji was telling these things to devout Christians. Only those who go through the path of the yogis, Swamiji says, Sushumna, reach the Atman. That means once you have internalized knowledge and you take up the path of the yogis. Actually, in Mundaka Upanishad, also in Gita, there is this expression that at the time of death, soul takes up one of the two paths. One path is that which keeps coming back to this world. Another path is that takes you to God. Now that's those of you who are interested in this discussion can listen to our talks on the 8th chapter of Gita. It is there in the playlist. You will see Gita and then go for the 8th chapter. There this thing has been explained elaborately in detail. Now, They must go to a guru to learn. Without teacher, how can you learn? Self-learned spiritual leaders, self-learned spiritual teachers can be pretty dangerous. And that is what we mentioned in the beginning, that unless there is a tradition to it, it can be very dangerous, because you may have some spiritual knowledge, there is no doubt about it. But your mind may be playing tricks with you. Now that we are on YouTube and all, we come across people who have some kind of spiritual awakening and definitely spiritual liking. They come up with strange questions where they confuse between mental tricks, not mental projections, with spiritual realization. That is where Guru is needed. Guru clarifies, he says, no, this is your mental aberration, this is your mental projection, they're not real spiritual realization. Meditation is the arrow, the whole soul going out to go is the bow, which speeds the arrow to its mark, the Atman. Mundaka Upanishad uses this example of the bow and arrow. Says, when you pull that arrow, you are the soul. Atman is that pulling power. And once it enters God, it becomes one with God. Sharvat tanmayo bhavet. It becomes the target and the arrow. They become one. God and soul, they become one. As finite, we can never express the infinite, but we are the infinite. Knowing this, we argue with no one. Actually, this is the crux of whole of Vedanta philosophy. And I don't know how people argue on all this. Mind is finite. We are finite. And we can never express the infinite. There's just no way. How can finite express the infinite? Sri Ramakrishna gives a beautiful example. If you have a pot, if you have a jar which can hold 1 liter, how can you put 3 liters in it? How can the finite mind ever know the infinite? It's such a simple thing. I don't find why people argue over it. It's such a simple argument. Of course, better minds can always come up with different kinds of arguments to place different ideas before us. However, we are the infinite. We are the infinite, and we have identified ourselves with the finite. Think of a jar immersed in, say, an ocean, and the ocean starts thinking that I am that jar. Naturally, its behavior will change. We are continuously assailed by misery and desires and pain. Why? We are infinite, but we think ourselves to be finite. Knowing this, we argue with no one. Once you know that, well, this is the fact. If you ask me personally, I understand why a particular religion or why a particular school of thought thinks like that. I know. They are trying to explain the infinite in their way. Well, that is what I am also doing. I am trying to explain, express, and understand the infinite in my own limited way. There's no doubt about it. But at least I have an inkling. I have an inkling of what I am doing. Others don't even have any inkling of it. Divine wisdom is to be got by devotion, meditation, and chastity. In different Upanishads, they talk about different paths that can be taken up for spiritual realization. Truth alone triumphs and not untruth. Satyamev jayate nanitam. The famous the government of India also uses this mark. Through truth alone, the way is spread to Brahman. You can reach Brahman, you can reach God only through truth. Nanitam, not through falsehood. Falsehood is not here just of words, of actions and everything. So that way, even the sacrifices and all, they belong to on rhythm. The early stages you need all these things, but after a time you need to devote and dedicate yourself entirely to God, where alone love and truth are. Real love, real truth lies only with Brahman, not with anything else. So Acharya Shankar, as we mentioned, that he focuses a lot on the Upanishads. Now people have this idea that Acharya Shankar commented only on the Upanishads. It's not that. So there are sections in Chandogya Upanishad which actually belong to the Vedas, and the elaborate commentaries there are actually the commentaries on the Vedas only. So Acharya Shankar, of course, did not have the time. And when you are very clearly saying that these are sacrifice, these are yajna, and these things will give you these results, why should Acharya Shankar get into that? So he just took the Upanishads, and he took the Gita, and he took the Brahma Sutras, and wrote his commentaries to bring out the fact that we, in essence, as Swamiji said, each soul is potentially divine. Goal is to realize this. And then, because we have to realize it with the help of our mind, naturally paths will be different. Because finite is trying to probe the infinite, finite is trying to reach the infinite. Naturally, the paths will be different. Such an obvious thing. So, well, this is where the day ended, and next talk was on July 11th. This we will take up the next day. Thank you so much.